Right. Well, we are here to be able to sign Senate Bill 4. A lot of people involved in this. Of course, Dave Yost has, in fact, talked to me early on. I even think before we got to the election about the need to do performance audits. Tim Schaefer, of course, is the sponsor. Stoutberg is here, and so is Todd Snitchler. You may not know, he's currently the head of the chairman of the Public Utilities Commission, for people that don't know that. And so anyway, what is the point here? The point of this is you got to root out a better way to do things. I welcome performance audits, even when it's performance audits on things that we're in charge of. Because what we have found over the period of the last 90 days or whatever it is that this state has been largely mismanaged over a significant period of time. And an awful lot of politics, and an unwillingness to dig in, an unwillingness to sort out those things that don't work because somebody doesn't want to step on somebody's toes. I understand that. Nobody wants to step on anybody's toes, but at the end of the day, if we have limited resources, we need to make sure that those resources are directed at solving problems. This morning, I appeared with the effort that we've been making on the fight against opiates, and you look at the ADAMS boards, which are really important. We're going to, we want to make sure that what the services they're delivering effectively. We've got programs to improve that. Most of them, I believe, have signed on to it. It came to my attention today that that one of the operations in the state government that will go unnamed in order to protect somebody's confidentiality, about 20% is being eaten up in administrative costs. I mean, we can't afford that. And in fact, I talked to Director Keene and the head of administrative services today about trying to measure the amount of administrative costs in most of these programs, because it's one of my gripes about the way we fund public education. If we're in the bottom 10 in dollars into the classroom and in the top 10 in terms of administrative overhead and red tape, we need to design a formula that's going to fix that. But it's not just there, it's across the board, and it's in our local governments. And so this is an effort by the Auditor Yost to be able to go out to do these performance audits, which I think we will all find very revealing. Back in the old days, when I was in Congress, we used the Congressional Budget Office, and we also used the Government Accounting Office, something I very strongly believed in, that could help us to get through and figure out how we could make things work better. And actually, it was the GAO study on debts that were owed the federal government that got me in the middle of writing my budgets. So I look at the Auditor's Office as a great resource. I'm sure that he will have reports that will say that my cabinet, the government that we're currently running, could be made more efficient. What do I think about it? I absolutely know that that's a fact. So we welcome this, and we're not going to hold anybody off or try to cover things up, and try to get to a point where we can march forward without any embarrassment. And I think the ability to have openness makes a lot of sense when it comes to managing this government. So I'm very pleased to sign this bill, and let me call on Senator Schaefer first to talk about his work in regard to this.
Thank you very much, Governor. This is a great day in Ohio. These performance audits will be an important tool not only for controlling costs in Ohio and in our state government, but also squeezing the most efficiency possible out of all of our resources. Our state is very fortunate to have some of the greatest employees in this country. I never cease to be amazed at what our employees accomplish. And it's our duty to make sure their talents are being utilized in a proper manner and to the fullest capacity possible to benefit the taxpayers and our investors in this great state. And a performance audit will certainly show us the roadmap to those efficiencies. I can't imagine trying to run a state government, all of us together, the executive branch, legislative branch, without a roadmap, without some sort of guide, without some sort of map to help us, show us the way. Governor, I want to thank you for your support, your steadfast support in all this process, and I'm thrilled to help give you this legislation and help you run a fantastic state government. And to Chairman Schnitzler, former Representative Schnitzler, and Representative Stockberg, Thank you so much for paving the way in the House of Representatives. You two have been wonderful partners in this entire process. And to Auditor Dave Yost for his absolute stupendous support for this legislation. He is going to do a great job with his staff, the experts he's brought on board, and performing these state performance audits across the state government. And also to President Niehaus for having the faith in us to move this legislation forward. So to all of you, I thank you very much for your support and efforts, and certainly for all the work you gentlemen have done in helping us in the House of Representatives and moving it forward in that chamber. Thank you, Governor.
God, you put me in a good mood just by listening to you. Steadfast, uplifting, great, huh? That all feels good. By the way, my buddy Tim Penny is here. Former congressman. He was my partner. I was actually his partner in the first shot heard around the world in the battle to balance the budget. You might recall we had the old penny Kasich bill trying to take 1 penny out of every dollar. And as many of you know, it was a bipartisan effort to defeat us, but we came extremely close. And we developed such a good relationship that I named my dog after him, Penny Kasich. And it's great to have him here from Minnesota. He was, he's now an independent, switched from a Democrat to independent, and he's a dear, dear friend of mine, and he's going to be here with me for a little bit of time, for today and part of tomorrow, and he is absolutely off limits to all of you. Let me see what else I wanted to say. Before I go to Dave here, I want to tell you something we're also thinking about, and every time I do this, Scott Milburn hyperventilates, but I think we have to really think about a way to have a robust reward program for employees who do an outstanding job. Now, I was yesterday at a call center with Jobs and Family Services, and they're really working hard to figure out some ways to do things differently. For example, they're having this telework where they're able to reduce the amount of space they have. They can work out of their home. They're very efficient and very effective. They've put into practice now this callback provision, so that I don't know if you've ever called the government, but you call and they say, "Hold 1 second, please," and then the year passes. Not always. We want to be responsive to people, but it's difficult. So they now have an automatic callback provision that they figured out. You leave your name and number, we'll call you back. I mean, it's really good. And when you go out and walk around there and you see that people are really dedicated, I'd really like to figure out a way to make more robust. I think at one point they actually had a program to do this. I'm not sure how much it's used, but I'm going to ask the staff as we get closer to this whole mid-budget process, mid-review, whatever they call it, to be in a position to think about whether there's some things we can do to reward people for work above and beyond the call of duty. So I think this all fits in, and as Dave goes through this, he might see some places where they do it, where it really makes a difference. But we want to empower our public employees, and that's the other message I have for all of them, is if you're not involved in something that involves corruption or inappropriate activity in the office, take a risk, take a chance. You're not going to lose anything. I'm not going to be upset with you because you were trying to be creative and things didn't work out and somebody played gotcha on you. I don't care about that. We want our people to be empowered, and with empowerment comes enthusiasm. With enthusiasm comes progress, and it also makes for a much happier and energetic workplace. So, David, you're up.
Thank you, Governor, and I want to echo Senator Schaefer, thanking you for your strong support and the commitment to your cabinet, through your cabinet, to work with us on these important projects. I thank you all, and I see Chris Jordan is here as well, and Representative Amstutz, who also did some heavy lifting on this bill. I'd like to recognize a couple of other people. Barb Benton from the Ohio Society of CPAs is here. I think they started talking about performance audits back when people said, "What's that?" And they've been a wonderful resource for my office and for Ohio government. Also, the County Auditors Association was very supportive of this measure, and Jill Thompson from the County Auditors Association is here. I want to mention that we have a local component to this bill as well. Everybody's heard me talk about how you can save money by doing performance audits, and in fact, the current average is about $24 for every dollar spent. And that's structural money that's year in and year out is recovered and comes back to be able to do the necessary things the government does. In fact, we just had a released audit for Youngstown City Schools that shows how they can find an additional $6.3 million in their operation. We've been doing this at the local level for a while on a consensual basis. The problem is, a lot of local governments that need this the most say, Dave, that's great, you're going to save $24 for $1, but I don't have $1. Well, the LEAP fund, which is part of this legislation, will allow the state auditor to do, on a limited basis, an advance of funds for the cost of the audit, and then pay it back a year later out of the savings, so that we remove cost as a barrier to helping skinny down local governments too. At the end of the day, as the governor likes to say, that's what we have to do at the state and local level, is skinny down the government. Finally, I'd like to introduce somebody to you today who will begin working on a limited basis next week, and by the end of the month will be running our state part of the performance audit. This fellow has an MBA from Harvard, has background.
You won't hold that against him.
Has a background in venture capital. He has a strong private sector background, which I felt was really important to bring into the process when we're looking at government operations. I'm sure that you members of the press will get to know him over the next couple of years, but I'm proud to have Ernie Knight on board. So, Governor, thank you again for having us here.
Where's the $6.3 million from Youngstown? How did you find it out of the schools? What did you discover?
I'm so glad you asked that.
I used to be at Fox News. Yeah, you guys forget that. It used to be one of you. Maybe one of you again someday.
One of your proposals about pooling healthcare costs is about a $250,000 item, or $750,000 item. We also, by purchasing energy through a consortium, could realize about $250,000 up there. Of course, most governments run on staff. Performance audits are not witch hunts, they are not gotcha exercises, they are driven by standards. I'm glad to hear you talk about the GAO, because the standards under which we operate, the so-called Yellow Book standards, are actually promulgated by the GAO. And the largest portion of the Youngstown City School savings came from comparing, benchmarking their peer agencies, other city school districts like them, and looking at their staffing levels. And what we determined is, because of their student enrollment has dropped more quickly than their employment, they're actually overstaffed in certain areas. So instead of
enrollment down,
staff stays up. Instead of just cutting with a chainsaw and just saying we're going to take 20% or 10% off everybody, the benchmarking shows what areas ought to be reduced by how much. I know it's time for us to get moving. So thank you for that.
I was just, the reason I say that is we took a look, and I don't know where this stands, but we look at urban districts in terms of enrollment and staffing. And I don't know if we're prepared to at some point, we're still working on it. Right?
I can get them help with that.
But basically what we're talking about is you see student enrollment declining, but staff is going up. So they're moving in opposite directions. The number of customers to be served has declined, and the number of staffers that are trying to serve fewer students has risen. I mean, that's a problem. So it's very interesting. And what you're basically saying in Youngstown, where I think the graduation rate is about 45%, is we see a decline in enrollment and an increase in staffing, which is overhead. And you want to get those dollars in the classroom. Plus, of course, when you look over there in the valley, we have many units of government, I think, number of school districts, something that needs to be looked at over time, which I think you'll be involved with. So with all that being said, I think I'll sign. Joe, I haven't seen you for a while. We've been in mourning because of the, we didn't make the playoffs this year.
Oh, yeah.
How about that first half last night? Was that something? Why did they start the game at 9:30 on a Monday? Who's watching? Did you, Reggie, were you up? Did you watch the whole game?
I did.
You did?
Yeah. Bad second half, though.
Oh, were you for, you were for Butler, weren't you?
It just wasn't a great
No.
second half.
Did it get better? No. That's completely wrong. Well, we'll fix it. We'll fix it. Yeah, thanks for helping me out there, guys. Dave, you settling in over there?
We're working hard, sir.
Okay. Done. Round of applause for all the people who were active. Tim, great job. Recycling? Yeah. Okay. So Tim, the story goes that Abraham Lincoln sat right over across from this desk, and they let him know that the House of Representatives had certified the Electoral College. And Lincoln sat right here. Lincoln was here 3 times. The first time was after the Lincoln-Douglas debates. And he came and he made an extremely long speech, and it was not well received. The second time he was here was when he found this out, and he came as a conquering hero. And the third time, he was not actually here, but his body laid in state up in the rotunda. And behind the members of the press is a bust of Salmon Chase, who was in, the team of Rivals. We have Doris Kearns Goodwin coming here soon. And that book, Team of Rivals, if you haven't read it, it is one of the great, great works. Would you agree with that, Joe?
I haven't read it yet.
Oh, anybody here read it? Jim, you've read it?
Halfway through it.
Terrific book about how he blended his cabinet. Chase, I think, was always causing a little bit of angst. Chase was a Secretary of the Treasury and then, of course, became a member of the Supreme Court. The interesting thing about Chase is that Chase actually could have become president, but because he couldn't lock down the Ohio delegation, he went to the convention, and Lincoln did the smart thing. He went around and told everybody that, I know you can't be for me on the first ballot, but maybe you could be for me on the second ballot. And everybody said, well, why not? And when the convention didn't pick somebody on the first ballot, they all then turned to Lincoln. And it's a fascinating story, and I commend that book, Team Rivals. And with Doris Kearns Goodwin on her way here to do a lecture and a lunch and a dinner, it should be a really, really great thing. But somebody took our governors down. Anybody know what happened to our governors? Huh? Nobody knows?
They're being touched up.
Oh, they're being touched up? Okay. Touch them up every 100 years. Okay.